Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Windbridge Afterlife Science Podcast, where we explore the mysteries of life, death, and what comes next. I'm Anna, your host, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Aliyah.
Hey there. Thanks for joining us today. Just an important note before we start. The information we share today is for educational and personal growth purposes. It's not a substitute for professional advice. If you're feeling any emotional or physical distress, we recommend reaching out to a healthcare professional. Remember to always check with your healthcare provider when considering treatment options or lifestyle changes.
Good points. Well, we've got a fascinating topic lined up for the episode, after-death communication experiences, or ADCs for short. This is something that touches a lot of lives, especially those who have lost someone close to them.
Absolutely. Today, we're going to break down a fact sheet from the Windbridge Research Center that categorizes ADCs into 4 types. We'll dive into what these categories mean and how they impact those who experience them.
But before we get started, Aliyah, have you ever had an experience that you might consider an ADC?
I've never experienced anything like that myself, but I've heard stories from people who have. It's one of those things that really challenges what we think we know about the boundaries between life and death. What about you, Anna?
I have, actually. After my grandmother passed away, I had a dream where she came to me and we talked just like we used to. It was so vivid and comforting. At the time, I didn't know what to make of it, but after reading about ADCs, it seems like it could be one of those spontaneous experiences.
That's a great segue into our first category of ADCs. According to the Windbridge Research Center, the most common type is the spontaneous after-death communication experience, or SADC. These happen unexpectedly and are not something the person tries to initiate.
Right. And these experiences can take many forms. Sensing the presence of the deceased, seeing or hearing them, even smelling a familiar scent associated with them. And it's important to note that these experiences are considered a natural part of the grieving process. They're not tied to any particular belief system or background.
Exactly. The research shows that SADCs occur across all demographics, age, gender, ethnicity, you name it. What's fascinating is that these experiences often bring comfort to the bereaved, helping them maintain a sense of connection with their loved one.
That's so true. But not all ADCs are spontaneous. The fact sheet also talks about facilitated ADCs, or FADCs. These are experiences that happen under specific conditions, often with the help of a trained facilitator.
Yeah, and this can include things like psychomantium sessions, where a person uses a mirror in a dimly lit room to try and see or communicate with the deceased, or methods like eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, or EMDR, that have been adapted for this purpose. The idea here is that these settings help to open a door, so to speak, making communication more likely.
It's really interesting how these methods are grounded in psychology, but still touch on something profoundly spiritual. Another type of ADC mentioned is the assisted after-death communication experience, or AADC. This happens when a psychic medium communicates with the deceased on behalf of the living.
Right? And in these cases, the medium is the one having the communication, but the person who requested the reading, the sitter, still feels that connection and often receives messages that are deeply meaningful. It's a more active form of ADC where the person is seeking out the experience rather than it happening spontaneously.
And finally, the last category the Windbridge fact sheet covers is requested ADCs, or RADCs. These are pretty unique because they don't fit neatly into the other categories. They happen when someone actively tries to communicate with the deceased, maybe through rituals, technology, or even with the help of psychoactive substances.
That's right. RADCs can be anything from using a spirit box to try and capture electronic voice phenomena to simply setting the intention to communicate and then noticing signs that seem to answer that call. It's fascinating how diverse these experiences can be.
It really is. One thing the fact sheet emphasizes is that all these types of ADCs are a normal part of the grieving process. What's important is how these experiences make the person feel. Are they comforting? Do they help the person move forward in their grief? That's what really matters.
And that brings us to a crucial point. How we talk about these experiences, the language we use can either validate or dismiss someone's experience. The fact sheet suggests avoiding words like paranormal or imaginal, and instead focusing on the healing potential of these experiences.
Exactly. It's less about proving whether the communication is real and more about recognizing the role it plays in helping people heal. Whether you believe in an afterlife or not, These experiences are real to the people who have them, and they can be incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. And as the fact sheet points out, not everyone will have an ADC, and those who do might experience them in different ways. There's no one-size-fits-all approach here.
So true. If you're listening and you've had an ADC, or if you're curious about this topic, we hope this discussion has given you some new insights. And remember, these experiences, however they happen, are a normal and natural part of the journey through grief.
Well said, Anna, and that's all the time we have for today's episode. But before we wrap up, I just want to mention that all the content from the Windbridge Research Center is free, and that's thanks to the support of people like you. If you'd like to help us keep creating and sharing this valuable research, please consider making a donation. You can also visit windbridge.org to join our email list for updates on our latest work and resources. Every little bit helps, and we truly appreciate your support.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We'll be back next time with more discussions on life, death, and what comes next.
Until then, take care and stay curious.